This book that I am bringing today. I told you it's a heavy one. It just smack you all around. You know what I mean? It's smacking me around since 2013. So, you know what I'm saying? 2014, it's been smacking me around. But let me let you know, it ties in so much to what you shared this week. And I'm just excited to be bringing it. And, we always let people know, we talk about all kinds of things on this page, any books of all types, so you will find a lot of spirituality in religion and all of these things like that. We are not here to convince anyone to do anything. We are just here sharing some pretty awesome books with you. So do with it as you will, do no harm, and just remember, hey, if you read it and you like it, let us know. How about that, right?
Right.
So my book this week came to me. It was gifted to me. Like I said, it was one of those books I probably never would have read because of the subject matter, and I was advised that I couldn't study the light without studying the dark. And that if I was to understand the soul, that sometimes I would have to go off of the path. And this book was gifted to me. Lords of the Left-Hand Path, Forbidden Practices, and Spiritual Heretics. From the cult of Set to the Church of Satan.
Woo!
So I don't need to tell you, let me get that out that light. I don't need to tell you that this wasn't something I probably would have readily picked up. Not because, it's all woo-woo scary or nothing, but I was like, nah, I'm good over here studying to be light and love and all this, be free, run like the wind kind of energy. But I was told by an elder, look, you're gonna have to open your eyes all the way, not just the pretty little fairy parts. So this book is written by Stephen E. Flowers, Ph.D. And its first release was in 97, and the second release in 2012. Like I said, it came into my life around 2013, 2014. The reason I'm listing this one as an unread is because I went into this book much like I do many of my books, which is reference for work that I'm doing in another space. But this book is worthy of its own space, so that's why I'm listing it as an unread. So let's talk a little bit about the author here. It says Stephen E. Flowers, Ph.D., received his doctorate in Germanic languages and medieval studies from the University of Texas at Austin, and studied the history of occultism at the University of Göttingen in Germany. The author to more than 24 books, including Hermetic Magic. He is the director of the Wood-Harrow Institute for Germanic and Runic Studies and lives near Austin, Texas. This book is powerful. And I say it's powerful because when we share books, when we talk about these books, we don't tell people to go in and word for word a book and everything it say is true. These are spaces to get us to start to think. And that's one of the things that this book says that it'll help you do. It'll help you get out of the mindset that things have to be just one way. Adam Parfrey, the author of Ritual America, The Secret Brotherhoods of Influence on American Society, said, left-hand path philosophy finally receives an objective and extremely informative reading from Stephen Flowers and is highly recommended. This book will be surely hailed as a classic in its field. So it says, Flowers explains that while the right-hand path seeks union and with thus dependence on God, the left-hand path seeks a higher law based on the knowledge and power. It is the way of self-empowerment and true freedom, beginning with the ancient Hindu and Buddhist sects and moving towards westward. He examines the many alleged left-hand path groups, including the cult of Set, the Assassins, the Neoplatonists, the Hellfire Club, the Bolsheviks, the Nazis, the heretical Sufi, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Muslim sect. I told you the book was controversial because everybody that think that that's one of the things we know, that everybody think their way is the way. That's why we got all the fighting going on, because everybody think their way is the way. But what this book is attempting to do is show that every one of them have a left-hand path and they all are related. I wanted to read here the preface here, just a part of it, because it talks about under the lens of reason. And it says, the contents of this book present the ideas of practitioners of the left-hand path, or those who have been considered as such, under the lens of reason. By entering into the minds of the masters of the left-hand path philosophies, the darkness is illuminated and deeper truths are revealed. No one who reads and understands the contents of this book will ever be subject to the tyranny of superstition perpetuated by the tabloid mentality as it regards the actual practitioners of the left-hand path, whether they are called Satanists, devil worshippers, or Satans. It says the common trait of all left-hand practitioners is that they focus on their own selves as their first source of power, and they seek to cultivate deep and enhance separate unique sources to the path of their own happiness by turning inward to the dark depths of one old soul to find a light as old as mankind. So I wanted to read that part because it's basically saying to us that the very thing that we do in many of our talks is that religion teaches you to step outside and seek outside for a source of power. In this so-called left-hand path, what they're saying is it's not what people say it is. It's a way of stepping inside and basically getting deeper into your spirituality, because you're looking at yourself as the source of power, and your source coming from the fact that you were created from a source that was great. So Lords of the Left-Hand Path, they go into some really, really heavy things in here. They have in the beginning here a little bit of talk about the right-hand path versus the left-hand path, white magic versus black magic, and the lords of the left-hand path. While it begins with the roots in the Orthodox Hebrew faiths and some of the others, and basically one of the things that is a heavy theme throughout is that religion has scared people into a mindset that won't allow them to be able to look deeper into self, because anytime you do step away from the regularly scheduled programming, you are now outside of what we say you can be, and you are a Satanist, devil worshiper, all of these other things. You know, I'm not the first person to say, nor shall I be the last person to say, that when you are talked about the word Lucifer and the roots of it and what it means, light bearer and all these different things, and you know, the word Satan not being what it means, like when you begin to look at these things, the stories that he tells in this book, they talk about basically stepping outside of said orthodox religion, i.e. Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, stepping out of the box version of it and seeking it on a more spiritual level, a deeper level. So basically what they're saying is the left-hand path that is so wicked and evil and dark is actually the true path inward to help us to evolve into what it is we say we want to be. Now, he also makes very clear in here that he's not saying that evil does not exist and people do not do horrible things in the name of anything. But he also made the very good point that in the name of quote unquote God, people do horrendous things as well. So I thought that was important to say, is that he did acknowledge the fact that people are extremists, and that's not what he was speaking to in this way. He does talk about the Gnostics, which I think in Gnosticism, and I think that's a very great addition to a book when you're talking about the left-hand path, because we know that now in these days people are thinking about the more esoteric levels of some of the things that they study, and they realize that this is Gnosticism, and it would be considered a left-hand path. It would be considered black magic by the standards in which society has called these things anytime you don't study the way they tell you to. And at this time, I just want to add this, not getting political, but if our youth are being made to study a book in school and they teaching them a certain kind of way, I'm just saying, this is the same thing over and over again, teaching inside of a box and letting you know that if you step outside of it, you are not, you are practicing something that's other than spiritual or holy or righteous or upright. The many sources that he lists here, I mean, when I say there's a complete list of references for each chapter of the book, he leaves nothing undone. I'm letting you know this is a very comprehensive book of information. Let me just go through the contents for you. It's the left-hand path, Eastern traditions, roots of the Western tradition, first millennium, the path of Satan, Lucifer unbound, and then it talks about an interlude elsewhere, speaking about Adolf Hitler and the modern mythologizing of evil, the occult revival, the Church of Satan, and the Temple of Set, which I thought was interesting that they went in that direction, because the Temple of Set I would have thought would have been in the beginning, but they put it at the end of this list, and I'm interested to go in and see why. There's a couple of points that I wanted to really jump into, but I'll land on this one for now, unless we continue in this vein. It was something I found very interesting. I got so many things highlighted here that I wanted to add on about, but this one talks about the ethics of the satanic ethics. And we've been covering morals in our unmasking morality and speaking of ethics and things of that way. And so it says, in what some might consider a paradoxical and ironic way, the Black Pope is a man virtually obsessed with morality and ethics. Machiavellian though these ethics might be, they are nonetheless strong and vital, just as the mythical Milton figure of Satan is expressed as rebellion against the inherent cosmic and justice embodied in Jehovah. So I just wanted to kind of show you that even in that path, they talk about morals and ethics and things that are held in high regard. And one of them is thinking for yourself. And this book encourages you to revisit some of the places that we were told are evil, and finding it that it's only those who have decided that they would not stay inside the box of said religion, in which is the origin of each of these paths. So Lord's the Left-Hand Path, Stephen E. Flowers. I'm more a definite reference book, one that you wouldn't just sit down and read like a novel. You don't, this is not that. You have to go in pretty much with intention. I definitely could see this easily taking a year to read, easily. You know, if you're going to go in and really do the references and things like that, I could see it taking a year. And you know, I thought it was interesting. It has very few pictures, but the few that it has, I thought were interesting. And because it talks about Jesus, the Lord of the left-hand path, and it's asking, was Jesus the left-hand path? Because they talk about the doctrine of law that was going on at the time. So Lords of the Left-Hand Path, y'all, just this is one that you can't go in if you are still afraid. This is one you can't go in if you can't break with the programming and conditioning of, you know, fire and brimstone. So this is not for the faint-hearted. Hey, Lord's the Left-Hand Path, y'all. Lord's the Left-Hand Path.
Woo! Oh my goodness.
Gotta let him cook, baby. Gotta let him cook.
Good Lord. Nigga, hot up in here. Woo!
And it's heavy too. It feel heavy. You know what I mean? It feel heavy.
Oh my goodness. Man. Well, you know, I got a lot of thoughts about this, but I want to do this first.
Okay.
We'll do this first. Go back to the beginning of your sharing when you were talking about the author. You said the author wrote 25 books and including what? What was that?
24 books. 24 books, including one on Hermetic magic.
Watch this. I'll give you that freebie right there. I
was saying, I know Nick has that book. I was like, I know he has that one. That's what I'm talking about.
I did share this one on my Instagram, maybe last year or the year before last. But yeah, because I'm like, that author's name sounds familiar. I heard that name before. I'm like, oh yeah.
That's magic.
I'm like, that's where I know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. See, look at that. So you know the type of writing that this author does, and you know he's very thorough. Mm-hmm. You know, he's very thorough, especially in listing references and things of that nature. You know, he lets you know that everything he doesn't necessarily agree with, but he's sharing, you know, equally, because, you know, he wants people to be able to make decisions for themselves. Absolutely. You know?
Absolutely. Yep. So now that I got that out of the way, let me see what I wrote down here.
Yes.
So you already answered what is meant by the left-hand path, because that was what I was thinking about initially, but you answered that. And the left-hand path really, brings to mind duality, for me. Duality and acknowledging duality, however you express duality, whether it's light and dark, yin and yang, it's the balance there that there's two sides. You use the word esoteric. The companion or the opposite of esoteric would be exoteric, with the X, exoteric. Now, a question that came to mind after I thought about what was meant by left-hand path is the history. Now, based on the bit of studying that you have done in this book, does he go into the history of how the practices or the systems that are considered left-hand paths become left-hand paths? Because we know when we study the history, sometimes we'll see that the left-hand path wasn't originally a left-hand path, but due to politics and social campaigns and things like that, the tables got turned, things got flipped up and mixed up, and the left-hand path became what is now labeled or considered to be the left-hand path.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great question. Yeah, he does briefly, and I think that's why he goes so deep into detail with his bibliography and references, because he wants to be able to put all of that in. As you can imagine, the many transformations that some of these groups take, it would be almost impossible to put it all into one document, one book. But it does talk about things that does show, like, for example, in the study of Nazis and magic, one of the things he talks about is what Nazi cosmology looks like. And people don't, some of these things people have never even heard of. So to kind of try to go in and embrace it, it would sound counter to everything probably that you were taught, but it does give a little bit of background into when. And what I think people would be surprised is the recentness in some of this. You know what I mean? For example, it talks about Michael Cater and his work in this, and it being in 1974. And then someone, Ulrich Hunger, in 1984, and how they become a part of this ideology and how it's constantly growing, and people are going deeper and deeper into the esoteric aspect of some of the studies that they had been given in traditional Christianity and things like that. And I think also more of what he does then show the evolution of it is he shows the practitioners of height at its time. So, for example, he talks about Crowley, when Crowley was in, like, you couldn't say magic without associating it with Crowley, and it's always been a time like that. And so that's what he does more of, and he actually speaks to that in the beginning of the book, that he shows you the practitioners of it and how they were applying it at the time that they were, and how it can become something that is dark and harmful and things like that, because he talks about the Nazis and things, Adolf Hitler and his movement in space, and how initially it was something else. So that is how he touches on that, but he speaks a lot to the actual practitioners of that time periods, and then he gives you references in the back for each practitioner of where you can find more information on the evolution of the practice. Okay. And that's why I said I was very surprised that he put the Temple of Set last, because we know the Temple of Set is ancient. You know what I mean?
Right. Is there a contemporary temple set also?
That's what he seems to be alluding to.
Okay. Yeah,
That's what he seems to allude to.
yeah, I'm thinking that might be the reason. There might be
Yeah,
a contemporary temple set.
absolutely. I wouldn't, I have something else I would like to share with that, but about this book, but I'll wait on that. But it definitely makes you wonder if there is a contemporary. I wouldn't be surprised.
Mhm.
Look at what's going on right now. We have more people being willing to shed the tradition and the dogma and things like that. And let me just say, where I felt this talk could definitely go in terms of how those books that the book you shared and this one goes together, and really starting to know the self and being able to be the best version of yourself, which would make you the happiest because you being the best version of you, is that the conditioning and programming of religion is so deep inside of people that it will not let them let go.
Mm.
I said for myself, this book is not one I would have readily picked up, not because I was afraid of it, or not that I was even afraid of it contradicting what I was thought I was believing at the time. It was more about, oh, I ain't gonna mess with that. That's that other stuff.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But if you remember that statement that I read to you, that he said he wanted this book to, one of the things he wanted from this work was to free people from superstitions. People think about our African traditions. Many of us don't mess with them because they look like something so foreign
Mhm.
and so scary and so native that we won't find connection with it, but then turn around and do Hail Marys and thank Saint Christopher and all these things, not realizing that these are the same things. You know what I mean? And you just are practicing an offshoot of something that a group says is evil. Just because somebody says something is evil don't mean, quote unquote, necessarily it is. But like he said, there is an element of harm in things out here, because if you working with free will, people will abuse that.
Mhm.
This is what we know. So one of the things the reason I read the part about the ethics and the morals is because people who really study the left-hand path have a line too.
Yep.
They have a line too. Just, and I would go so far as to say they have a line, because we know some of this other stuff won't even give you a line. It just say, because I said so, heaven and hell, do what I say, and that's it. This is more adult, if you will, because you have to say, you know what, that right there crossed my line. Not going to do it. Just because I have knowledge of it and I know how to do a thing don't mean I have to do it. You know what I'm saying? We know how to trick kids and take lollipops, but we don't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I love the babies and the lollipops. But
Yeah.
I just, it's I think that these kind of books that we offered today are for those who have decided, even with fear still embedded in them a little bit, that I'm willing to at least begin to open my mind and allow myself to make, you'll know if something is for you, if it's not, you'll know.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just like with any other book, you'll know what's for you and what's not. But I think this is one of those spaces, these is one of these opportunities where you can actually begin to think for yourself, like really, sit and reason. You know what I mean? Sit and reason. And that's why he talked about reason. And then he said, because what somebody would say is a dark path is more of you just saying, okay, I got the surface level of what y'all was trying to tell me, but now how do I believe it? How do I work it into my life? How do I stand on it? I can repeat what you said. I could parrot what you said, but can I live it? And that's what I feel like the left hand path is about. And that's kind of how he addresses it here. And again, you know, I'm not here to convince nobody. I'm just telling you what I saw. The book is excellent, great reference. A lot of surprising little things in there. And I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, yeah. What you were just saying, that last part about the experience, you know, believing it for yourself. That's the whole concept of mysticism, and you know, particularly Christian mysticism, as I've studied and I've gained some more familiarity with it, is that, you know, in the box, in the traditional sense, Christianity is, like you said, reading the text, understanding what the text is saying and what it means. But the mysticism piece comes in when you have that individual spiritual experience that's individual, you know, for you. That's a prime example there. And speaking of that, you were talking about Jesus in the left-hand path. I would take a stab at that question and say that Jesus would be considered the left-hand path, especially during the time in which that narrative was written, or the setting of that narrative. because you know, the traditional, you know, Jewish priests and scholars, you know, they're looking at like what the
who this
guy, who do he think he is?
Facts.
Going, you know, him and Paul, they was on some other stuff like during that time. They was radical during their time. You know, it seemed normal now to everybody. It seemed like the right hand path and the normal path now, but back during that time, that was definitely the left hand path.
Absolutely. It was the fact that they had to meet in secret. Anytime you got to meet in secret, you already outside of their box.
Oh yeah.
You know, you outside of their box. You know, they consider it heresy instantly. You know what I mean? And they instantly will get rid of you if they can. But definitely Jesus would have been considered, you know, left hand path. And you know, and I want to just say for those watching, you know, we are not talking necessarily about these physical bodies, because that always give it, they be like, oh, they think Jesus was real important. Listen, we not here. We talking about the moral of the story. Dang it, y'all, stay with us, ride with us, work with us here. We are talking about these ideas that help us shape and mold us. You know what I mean? Again, being willing to be radical, to learn, and to push forward in a system that's doing you dirty. That's what's needed now. We need people to snap out of it now. Turn inside and ask themselves what's really real, what's really good, you know, so they can achieve the things that they are working towards now. You know, and I think it's unfortunate that we so quick to label each and everything. But we all know, regardless of right hand path or left hand path, it's people that's doing wrong. And what we say is wrong is the collective wrong.
That's why I was that. Oh yeah, that's why I wanted to touch on too. When you were talking about that line,
yes,
because you know, a lot of people who are in that box, they will tell you that being a good person is not enough. When in actuality, being a good person is spirituality. That's what it is.
And what is a good person?
Right.
What does that look like? You know, what all does that entail?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. But we're talking about good, good and evil. We think about all the people, like we said, that know their text and know their doctrine from front to back, but they're tripping children and taking lollipops.
That part, stranger danger. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, I agree.
That's what we talking about.
And you made a point where you even said, it in mysticism, they talk about that space that you get to where you do it just because you don't want to. Not because, not because you'll get in trouble, not because you go into heaven or hell, not because anybody is watching, which they talk about as a part of integrity, but this is where we say, you know what? That's a line for me right there. I'm good on that. I'm good on that right there. And that looks different for everybody. And that's where I'm not here to tell you, one way or the other. But what I will say is, from my experience and from my studies, do no harm is best in this whole situation. And worry about yourself. Like he said, what did he say? Most people with a left-hand path are more worried about themselves than anybody else. They ain't thinking about nobody else. And this is how you see the evolution of these things getting out of control and turning into just more organizations, because you get these people who go off and be like, you know what? And they recognize their own power, and they recognize the ability to be able then to lead people. And so then they'll go lead people for their own agenda. That's where it starts to, take a turn. But the left path itself is just those that's willing to say, I'm ready to go inside. I'm ready for the deeper. Lessons, deeper visions, deeper parts of me.
Yep. Yep. Going into the deep, dark depths in order to find that enlightenment. That's why Napasha Das, he says, peace to the darkest minds of the light.
Listen, bro. Yep. Listen. Yeah, I want to share this one last piece with you, because this is
go ahead.
Gonna give you a giggle.
Go ahead. So, we could go ahead and start reading the book.
Yeah, hey, listen. This part is gonna make you giggle like it made me giggle. Philosophical distillations from the high priest Peter H. Gilmore. You see how we keep coming across that name Gilmore? We're gonna talk about that another time. But Peter H. Gilmore grew up in the Hudson Valley in New York. Gilmore holds a BS and an MA in musical composition from the New York University. He's also been a devotee to the teachings of Anton LaVey since the age of 13.
What?
And in 2001, he was named the high priest of the Church of Satan.
What?
As it appears now, LaVey could have hoped for no better successor. Gilmore entered his tenure as high priest as exceedingly well-seasoned student of the Black Pope. He has not tried to change the LaVeyan teachings, but he has distilled and refined them in a mode that seems centered in the heart of doctrines of the first high priest. Gilmore has brought many of the ambiguities and double-edged nuances inherent in LaVey's style into sharper philosophical focus. Gone are the oblique references to the man downstairs or to the carnal body as a mere shell, or to ideas of part of a person surviving death and gaining immortality.
Huh. Which is
in the Hudson Valley.
the Hudson Valley. In the beautiful Hudson Valley.
In the beautiful Hudson Valley, baby. I was like, really now? Now you know all that made me want to do is get in my vessel and ride around.
Oh yeah, yeah. See what you can find. You know, hit up them historical societies and them halls of
trust
records and
me,
all
you
of
know
that.
I already been. You know I already been, but I thought that would give you a good tickle. The
Oh,
Hudson
it did.
You listen, a seasoned student of the Black Pope. You know, that's something we haven't talked about,
Yeah,
you know, in UnRead. We kind of left that one alone.
yeah, but I don't have any of those on my shelf. I do, they are on my list. Been on my list for a while, but I haven't gotten them to myself yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I tell you, when I was asked one time about, you know, studying comparative religion, I said you study everything basically from atheism to Zoroastrianism. And one of the things that I will say is that in this book, he ends with, you know, Zoroastrianism, Zervanism, things that people probably have never even heard of. And I think it's so vital, especially now as people are still experiencing their wokeness that I heard will no longer be tolerated.
Whatever that means.
What does that even mean? I'm like, anyway, I say like this, the things that you could spend your time kind of looking at in terms of benefits and, you know, what can benefit you and whatnot, you'd be surprised where you'd find some wisdom. You know, as Muslim, you know, I found it interesting that they had something about Muslims in here and Islam in here, and I was like, okay, you know, because I was like, why wouldn't you? You know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't you? Is you know, you're gonna find everything in here because everything has the source. I mean, it talks about the, you know, the burning of the witches and the assassins of the mountains, and you know, just all of these things that you probably wouldn't even think have any root anywhere else than the places that we're told they are. You know, I remember, you know, Islam being presented in a way where, you know, this is this thing that, you know, is, you know, perfected in its space, but whatever, you know, but you also are made aware that it came from a state, as they say, of Jahiliyyah, which is a state of ignorance, you know, and when things were basically people were worshiping idols and doing all the crafts and all these different things like that. But again, isn't that what you see going on right now? So why wouldn't we have to go back and look at some of these old things and take a look at them? Because, you know, I'm not for reinventing the wheel. I'm like, I will study the wheel. You know, I see the benefits of the wheel. You know, I see how the wheel could also hurt you. So is going in and being able to discern and think for yourself. So I think it's a really interesting book. And let me just say, and it's very few times I would say I don't recommend a book for anyone. But you remember one time I talked about a book here on UnRead, and I said when I got it, I realized that I wasn't grown enough to read it. You know, this is one of those books you have to be secure enough in your space to kind of read, because if not, one, it can confuse you, and two, could it could possibly skew your vision on, you know, what is you know, quote unquote good or bad for you, to help you be the best version of yourself. So always about being the best version of yourself. Wonderful book. Lord's Left Hand Path, Forbidden Practices and Spiritual Heresies, from the Cult of Set to the Church of Satan. Stephen Flowers.
Yep.
This
Yep.
it.
In other words, y'all better study y'all lessons, go through y'all degrees, get initiated before you take on that book.
Yeah, this is not one. You know, like I said, it's not a book to sit down and just read like a novel. You're not just going in there like that. You better sit down with a notebook and a pencil and get ready to, write down some words and look up some references. And like I said, he's made it so easy with this reference area, man. Like, it's so detailed by chapter, and then he goes in and does the bibliography, which is, alphabetical order. So, I mean, there's no way you can't go straight to, you got the Google in your hand, you can go straight to the source and look, you know what I mean? So it's a great book for reference, for people writing papers, getting ready to do lectures, studying deeper, helping you to understand maybe which direction you want to go. So again, it's a great book, Lord's Left Hand Path.